that you all came out. You came in the cold weather for the class tonight. Before we start, I want to make an announcement that our friend and classmate Mark Kupferberg is going to be honored on Monday, February 9th at the Kupferberg Center at Queens College. Queensborough College, and Mark said that he would love for everybody to come. You can talk to Mark to get details about the event, but Mazel tov, Mark. That's really exciting. Yes.
The concert is Soul to Soul with Zalman Milotek's group who was here last April, and featuring the Sharena Choir of Long Island with at least one member of the family.
All right.
And Rebecca Watman too.
Yes, fantastic. Sharenu
And
Zalman Milotek.
Judy Blatter's mother Joy.
Yes. Yeah, Renee.
I also want to say that the Kupferberg family, when I was the alumni director at Queens College, his father was one of the first graduates of the college in 1930. 41, came in 37, and he was extremely active and part of doing everything for the college. So I knew the family, and it goes down in history how they're all so generous with what they want to do and what's it.
It's like their internet froze.
Additional note before we begin the class, by request, I am going to restate, or maybe state for the first time in this series, but you have heard me say it before. It is the Fitzgerald rule. The Fitzgerald rule is the guiding rule for all of our gatherings that involve, presentations and questioning and whatnot. The Fitzgerald rule is this, that questions are always welcome, but only I get to make the speeches. Okay, so that is the Fitzgerald rule. That is the general rule of practice for our class. So with that, let's begin with our blessing for study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, there's a question about issues with the audio. Are y'all having a difficulty hearing me, Dory?
We had a point in time where you froze for about 30 seconds or so.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So,
yes.
Wonderful. Tonight is session 2 of our unit on Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah. And we have 2 presentations from students about our readings. So the first one is going to be Len. Len is joining us from online. So I'm going to put Len here. And Len, please go ahead and share.
Len just realized he might have done the wrong summary.
The wrong summary?
Len might have done the wrong summary. I did the one on Maimonides using history to justify the Mishnah Torah. Is that not what I was supposed to do?
Oh, no. Well, your summary here says Al Beth-El chapter 3, ethics and belief in the commentary on the Mishnah.
Yeah.
Len screwed up.
Oh, okay. Oh, but you summarize, I see. You gave it the right title, but then you summarized a different article?
I signed up for it. I got sort of pulled into I volunteered for it without signing up for it. So I didn't.
Okay.
I screwed up. I apologize.
It's okay. All right, no worries. So Jackie, Aaron. Yes. Come on up, Jackie. You can come have a seat.
Okay. I had the summary of commentary on the Mishnah by Joel Kramer. Maimonides started his commentary on the Mishnah in Fez in 1161 and completed it in Egypt in 1168. He wrote in Judeo-Arabic, the language of his fellow Jews who lived in the Middle East, and later it was translated to Hebrew. The Mishnah had become the basis for legal discussions in Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmud. As in Jewish law in general, civil, personal, criminal, and constitutional law are all covered, as well as ethical norms. Using poetry, Maimonides presented his finished work as a lavish garden that he had watched over and cultivated over 7 years. Towards the end, he compared it to the Tower of David and announced, I, Moses ben Maimon, the Sephar Adi, erected it. That's it, end of quotes. Maimonides then explained how he had wandered the world over the past 7 years and asked for forgiveness for taking so long and possible mistakes due to his distractions along the way. He made the Mishnah clear by simplifying what was complicated, which allowed students more time for other subjects, such as philosophy and science. Wishing to introduce new students to the Talmudic study, he gave an overall view of the Talmud through the Mishnah. For the advanced students, the commentary could be used as a guide, making what the students had learned organized and accessible.
Very nice. Thank you, Jackie. Great job. Okay, so, let's put this back over here. Okay, so, thank you, Jackie. Tonight's material is totally different from the material that we studied the last 2 weeks. This is going to give you your first taste of the breadth of Maimonides' work. And you will see that he not only writes philosophy and talks about abstract things, as we have been reading the last couple of weeks, but he also writes law, and his works on halakha, Jewish law, are very clear and concrete. It's a very different style of writing, and it's a testament to, I think, to Maimonides' unique genius that he was able to write such important masterworks in both fields of philosophy and halakha, and ways that were widely received and accepted and studied throughout the Jewish world. So if you were feeling last time that, oh my gosh, what is he talking about? It's so out there, these abstract concepts. Well, you're in luck, because we're getting into the concrete, and we're going to be for the next several weeks tonight in the commentary of the Mishnah, and then when we get into Mishnah Torah, it's all very concrete material, because it's halakha, Jewish law. So what we read last week on the 13 principles of faith is included in Rambam's Mishnah commentary. But as I explained last time, it's part of an extended essay that he wrote within the Mishnah commentary, but it's not in the normal style of the Mishnah commentary, because the Mishnah is a work of law. It's the first attempt by the rabbinic tradition, the rabbis of old, to codify Jewish law, the law of the Torah. All right, when I say codify law, what does that mean? Anybody have a sense of what that means? Lori?
They put it together usually in book form or scroll form,
Uh-huh.
so that it's accessible to people.
Okay,
Written down, I think, would be the most.
okay, yeah, so that's an important element of it, is writing the laws down in a form that's accessible. What makes a code of law, what might make a code of law accessible to people?
Jerry has her
Arlene.
hand up.
Oh, okay, Arlene and then Jerry.
So what I was just gonna continue on what Lori said is that, not just to make it accessible, but to codify on that too. But to take, this one said this one said that, got Shammai and, like, again, to find the law or the essence of whatever Maimonides believed to be the right thing and
Okay.
to pare it down to just. that.
Okay, yeah, so a part in halakha, in the field of halakha, an important part of codification is the simplification of the legal material. Because, if you have ever studied Talmud, and I know we have several people who are in our class who study the Daf Yomi, which is the day, the page of Talmud each day over the course of a number of years, you know that the Talmud is vast and only very loosely systematized. So the Talmud is organized by volumes. I think, I want to say there's 25 or more or less volumes of the edition of the Talmud. They're organized by topic, but only in a very loose way, because the Talmudic style of discourse is stream of consciousness. That's just what the rabbis created. Whether they talked that way, thought that way, I don't really know, but the people who put the Talmud together created a text that is like that. So for instance, there is a volume of the Talmud called Shabbat, right? So you might think, oh, in this volume of the Talmud, I'm going to find all the information I need to know about Shabbat. Well, when you open a volume of Shabbat, you will find a lot about Shabbat. But A, not everything to do with Shabbat is found in Tractate Shabbat. And B, there's lots of stuff in Tractate Shabbat that has nothing to do with Shabbat, because that's just the style of it. So codification is a means of bringing law together in some kind of systematized way that people can figure out and understand and find what they need. Okay, the Mishnah, which predates the full Talmud, the Mishnah is the first effort to codify the laws of the Torah. The Mishnah was composed by the earliest generations of rabbis or sages, roughly the 1st century before the Common Era through the 2nd century of the Common Era. So a period of about 300 years was the period of the Mishnah. And at the beginning of the 3rd century of the Common Era, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, the leader of the Jewish community in Eretz Yisrael at the time, compiled the Mishnah, meaning he took teachings, interpretations, rulings by the sages of these 300 years about different parts of the Torah, different, commandments in the Torah and passages about law. And he organized it tried to organize it kind of by topic so that it would be accessible, people could find it, people could know what to do. That was the first attempt. Now, after the Mishnah is codified, then the Jewish people, we kind of go into diaspora, into the Babylonian, the Jews had gone into Babylonia before that, but the Babylonian diaspora becomes more prominent than the Eretz Israel community. More Jews are living in Babylonia than in Eretz Israel. This is the time of the Talmud, where the sages of Babylonia study the Torah and they study the Mishnah. And they have discussions about it and interpretations and comments and questions and whatnot. And after several hundred years of that, their discussions are combined with the discussions of the Mishnah, put together in one big compilation, which is called the Babylonian Talmud. By the time Maimonides comes along, he's in the Middle Ages, remember, he's in the 12th century. The Talmud has already been closed, has been kind of closed, already for about 500 years or so by the time Maimonides comes along. So he's part of a community that studies the Torah and the Talmud. The Talmud includes the Mishnah, which is the earlier sages' interpretations of Torah law, and the Gemara, which is the later sages' interpretations of Torah law. Together, Mishnah and Gemara make Talmud. And Maimonides wants to try to simplify all of the material so that people can access it and understand it. Because what do we know about Maimonides? How should time be spent? Studying what?
Everything.
Everything, including Torah and mathematics and science and philosophy, right? Because knowledge of God is the purpose of human existence. So, Maimonides' goal is very practical. Rather than people having to work through the Talmud and all the commentaries on the Talmud and everything, which is so vast and takes immense amount of time to work through it, he decides that he's going to try to streamline it by taking the Mishnah, which is the foundational text, and curating all of the important ideas and interpretations and rulings and such about law that he knows from having studied the Talmud and being as brilliant as he is, and distill it as explanations of the Mishnah. Okay, so instead of having to read all that on material and study all that stuff, you could look at the Mishnah with Maimonides' notes on the Mishnah to explain it, and he will have distilled the Talmud for you and all that kind of stuff, so you can spend a lot less time having to work with all that, and you have more time to study philosophy and science and all kinds of other things. Okay? So that's what the Mishnah commentary is. It's his first major work. He wrote it, I think he finished it around in his early 30s. Wrote the Mishnah commentary, which, my goodness, right? The Mishnah is not small, and he was very young, and he had mastered this material all to the point that he could write a comprehensive commentary on the Mishnah for these purposes. Renee.
Yes, what language was it? Did he write it?
He wrote it in Judeo-Arabic, as Jackie told us. Yeah, that's the language of the vernacular of where he lived. Essentially the Arabic language written in Hebrew letters.
Got two hands up on Zoom. Jerry Mendelson.
Yeah, sorry, let's go to Jerry Mendelson first, and I'm sorry I skipped.
Oh, you don't have to go to me because Arlene said what I was going to say. Thank you.
Okay. Now we also have someone on iPhone who has their hand up.
Yeah, iPhone.
Yes, Rabbi, it's Naeem. Good evening. So the Mishneh Torah, Maimonides completely left that, did not use the Gemara at all. Talmud, Jerusalem Talmud, Babylonian Talmud. That's my
No,
question.
so we're not to the Mishnah Torah yet. That's gonna be our next unit. This is the Mishnah commentary first. And he does use all of that material. He just distills it in his own way.
So did he just occupy himself with the Babylonian Talmud, or did he include the
No,
Jerusalem Talmud
everything.
too?
Jerusalem Talmud, all the commentaries, everything that was written of any significance up to his point in time, he knew it and he incorporated it to the best of his. I mean, there are some things he didn't know because they, we talked about last time, like he was not aware of the work of Rashi in French, but in France, but everything that he had access to, which would have included the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud, he had access to, he knew it, he incorporates it. But he distills it. Okay, but just like in our class, Jackie just gave us a summary of the article. That's what Maimonides did, for the whole rabbinic tradition. And he does it, his first attempt at it is by writing explanations of the Mishnah. Now he's gonna go on later to write another his major work of halakha, which is more comprehensive, but we're gonna get to that later. His first attempt at this, of distilling the whole tradition for the sake of ease, is as a Mishnah commentary. Okay, so we're gonna look at that tonight. Jerry, you had a question.
So his belief in terms of people learning philosophy, learning art, all that, to study, not just learning halakha and learning God, is different than, like, say, the current or the past Orthodox who just study Talmud all day and feel like that's
Right.
So it's very, very
That is different, yeah. Rambam did not believe in only studying Torah and Talmud. He believed in studying all sources of human knowledge. So in order to be able to do that, you had to streamline. Okay, so we're gonna take a look now. If you would, take out the text, the second text behind the green page in your Unit 2 tab. It says, it's got Hebrew in the middle of the page, it says chapter 4. And up in the upper right, it says Unit 2, P2. Okay, this is gonna be our primary text for tonight. It's not super long, which is kind of the point, to see what Rambam did in writing the Mishnah commentary. So this is his commentary on chapter 4 of Tractate Sanhedrin. Tractate Sanhedrin tractate is the term for volume. Sanhedrin is one of the volumes of the Mishnah and the Talmud. Remember, the Mishnah and the Talmud the Mishnah is just the earliest layer of the Talmud. The organization of the Talmud follows the organization of the Mishnah. Whereas the Talmud elaborates on the Mishnah in very extensively, huge volumes, Rambam's goal here is to make it, a short commentary on the chapter so that you can get the key points, know the things that you need to know. Which is why his work is not very long here in this chapter. So Tractate Sanhedrin deals with primarily with criminal law, civil law also, but mainly criminal law. Based in the Torah. Remember, the Torah deals with all kinds of topics relating to criminal actions. And it's in Tractate Sanhedrin where the sages bring together, more or less, all the various laws of the Torah having to do with criminality, and bring it into Tractate Sanhedrin. Chapter 4 of Tractate Sanhedrin, and it's not the only chapter, there's several of them, but this is one that the primary subject of which is capital punishment. Okay, so we're gonna study chapter 4 about capital punishment with Maimonides' commentary. Studying this tonight is, because of how he wrote this, what we're doing is essentially studying chapter 4 of Sanhedrin, of Mishnah Sanhedrin. Maimonides is our guide in studying this chapter. That's what the Mishnah commentary is. That's a particular genre of writing. When we study Mishnah Torah, you'll see it's a different genre, but in this case, his commentary helps us understand the Mishnah. Okay, David, you had a question.
So these are like cliff notes and then following exactly as the Talmud would, whatever.
Yes.
Tractate 1, he's got his cliff notes for Tractate 1, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, Phil.
Just for clarification, the Hebrew is that the source and what's in English is his commentary?
The Hebrew is the source, that's the Mishnah, but there's an English translation where it says Mishnah 1. That's the English translation of the Hebrew, and then you'll see on the bottom of the next page it says Maimonides, and that's the translation of his commentary. Okay, so let's get into it. Here we are studying chapter 4 of Mishnah Sanhedrin. And you'll see the Mishnah is, as a code of law, is organized into relatively short paragraphs, one after the next. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. The terminology you should be aware of is the entire work is called the Mishnah, and each paragraph of law within the chapter is called a Mishnah. It's just the terminology. Okay, so the Mishnah is the big whole volume, the whole collection. A Mishnah is a paragraph. That's why it says Mishnah 1 means paragraph 1 of chapter 4. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yes.
during this time when he was writing this,
Yeah.
were there critics and saying that his interpretation wasn't right?
That comes more so with the Mishnah Torah, which we'll learn about next time. Here this is his kind of like his coming out work. I mean, Maimonides is a young guy here at this time, and this is his first book. Okay, so he's making a name for himself by writing this. Later on, when he gets to Mishnah Torah, his masterwork of Halakha, yes, he has lots of critics, but right now he's just establishing himself with this work. The term Mishnah, okay, the term Mishnah means to repeat. Why is the Mishnah called Mishnah? The repeating.
Oral Torah?
Yes, because this is a work of what we know of as the oral Torah. For a certain period of time, until really around the time the Mishnah is composed, and I don't know if this is the first thing written down or not, but in any case, it's the end of the Mishnah period, thereabouts, where the leaders of the community, the rabbis, decide, they've been studying the Torah and discussing its meaning for a long time, just orally, and passing it down from one, teacher to student, orally. So it's called the oral Torah. But there came a time where they said, you know what, we better write this thing, so that people who come after us can remember it, because It's getting to be so much. And Jews are starting to scatter around the globe and, you know, better to have it written down. But for a long period of time, and I don't know the answer, but there's articles you can read about how this eventually happened, but it was an oral tradition. So Mishnah was taught in these short paragraphs, a Mishnah, to students so that they could repeat it, they could memorize it, and then repeat it. So that's why this is called Mishnah. Okay? All right, so let's get into the chapter 4, Mishnah 1. Both monetary cases and capital cases require inquiry and investigation. As it is written, you shall have one manner of law. That's a biblical citation. Let's see the verse, and there's footnotes at the back, which will tell you that is Leviticus chapter 24, verse 22. It says, you shall have one manner of law, which the Mishnah here interprets to mean that all law, or at least in respect to monetary cases and capital cases, are adjudicated the same, except for the ways in which they're not, which is the subject of the rest of the chapter. But the first statement, and this is typical of rabbinic rhetoric, and we'll see Maimonides use it, especially in his Mishnah Torah, where a general principle is stated, and then discussion about all the variations from the general principle. But the general principle here is all cases, all types of cases require inquiry and investigation. So when we're gonna adjudicate a case, you have to, you know, get the information, basic. And that's true both of monetary cases. Monetary cases would be any kind of cases dealing, you know, with civil damages or whatnot, you know, that involves money. And then capital cases, cases when, you know, somebody is liable to the death penalty should they be found guilty. Then he goes on, then the Mishnah goes on. What is the difference? What is the difference between monetary cases and capital cases? Okay, thank you. Monetary cases are decided by 3 judges. I wonder if we could turn that off, maybe whoever has that. Thank you. Okay, monetary cases are decided by 3 judges, but criminal, and that it should say capital, I think, it's the same word. Criminals or capital cases by 23 judges. Monetary cases may be opened either with arguments for acquittal or for conviction. But capital cases must begin with arguments for acquittal and may not begin with arguments for conviction. Monetary cases may be decided by a majority of 1, either for acquittal or for conviction. But capital cases can be decided by a majority of 1 for acquittal, but by a majority of at least 2 for conviction. Monetary cases can be reversed either from conviction to acquittal or from acquittal to conviction. But capital cases may only be reversed from conviction to acquittal, but not from acquittal to conviction. In monetary cases, all may argue for acquittal or for conviction, but in capital cases, all may argue for acquittal, but not all may argue for conviction. In monetary cases, he who argued for conviction may subsequently argue for acquittal, and he who argued for acquittal may subsequently argue for conviction. But in capital cases, he who argued for conviction may subsequently argue for acquittal, but he who argued for acquittal cannot later change and argue for conviction. Monetary cases are tried during the daytime, and may be completed at night, but capital cases must be tried during the daytime and concluded during the daytime. Monetary cases can be tried and concluded during the same day, whether for acquittal or conviction. But capital cases may be concluded on the same day for acquittal, but only on the following day for conviction. Therefore, trials are not held on the eve of a Sabbath or on the eve of a festival day. Okay, so this is talking about a rabbinic system of justice. You know, in the Mishnaic period, the rabbis established courts to adjudicate the law, because in the pre-modern times, and when we say pre-modern, before the period of enlightenment in the 18th century, in the pre-modern world, Jewish communities, generally speaking, and I can't state, I don't know enough about it to say if this is always the case or not, but generally speaking, Jewish communities lived, under the jurisdiction of some empire or wherever they were, but were internally autonomous. Okay? As a Jewish community, let's say, living under living in the Spanish Empire or living in the Muslim Empire, they had to pay a certain tax to the king for the privilege of living there, but the king didn't get involved with internal affairs. Community governed itself. As long as they paid their taxes to the king, they governed themselves. So this means of this justice system is developed for a society that works that way. Okay, with internal self-governance, and the Mishnah is telling us, we're jumping into the middle of the conversation, but for monetary and capital cases, how the rabbinic justice system works. Okay, Mickey. Yeah.
Who does the arguing?
Okay, so it seems that the arguing.
What was the question?
Who does the arguing?
Okay, thank you.
So this chapter does not speak anything about attorneys. I don't know, if they had that in those times or what. That would be an interesting question for investigation, but the chapter does not say anything about it. From everything that I know about it and the readings that I've done on this chapter, is that the judges, it sounds like it's a trial conducted by judges who are asking questions and, gathering evidence and debating with each other. As it seems to work that way. So when the Mishnah is talking about arguing for conviction, arguing for acquittal, best I can tell is it's referring to the deliberations of judges. Okay, there was Andy.
This is very likely stuff considering when it was. I mean, it's hundreds of years, if not 1,000 before the British system, which came before us. And it says that in civil matters, things are equal, everybody gets to speak their side, and it's kind of a back and forth. But in criminal matters, especially capital matters, it says, we lean towards acquittal.
Yes, right.
I mean, our system is even more than the British, but still, it's almost 1,000 years before the British did it, and then we're hundreds of years after.
Yeah. So you can tell from this chapter that there is there's structural bias toward acquittal, because the standard for conviction in capital cases is higher than A, the standard for conviction in monetary cases, and B, the standard for acquittal in either. Yeah, Bob.
It seems like also you presume somebody's innocence rather than starting off with their conviction. It seems like, or also in talking about the modernness of this, that you can't, once you're acquitted, you can't be again for the same
Yeah, right.
I don't know a lot about law, but
Yeah.
it's like, you know.
Yeah, once, it does say that, once somebody is it in this one? Did we read it?
Yeah, can't go from acquittal.
Yeah, once you're acquitted, you can't be later, it can't be later convicted. So, but the reverse is not true. You could be convicted and then later be acquitted. So yes, you have things that show up in our contemporary secular system, for sure, here. Yeah, they're, from the outset, the sages are making clear that they're constructing a system that is very cautious about implementing capital punishment. Now, that might seem on its face, odd, given the fact that the Torah in every other sentence is basically saying you get death. If you do this, you're put to death. You do this, you're put to death. I mean, the Torah has lots and lots of death penalty in it, right? And this is the law code, the first law, rabbinic law code, created on the basis of the Torah. If the Torah is the constitution, the Mishnah is the earliest generations of court decisions. The court decisions here are making it quite difficult to enact the death penalty that the Constitution says do it for everything. Okay? So that reflects. So why did the rabbis interpret it that way? Is it because that's what the Torah means objectively? I mean, is there such thing as objective? Like, it could also be reasonably interpreted to say, like, to make it a different standard. The Torah says, give them the death penalty, do it. You don't have to get any evidence. But no, the sages have a predisposition to be skeptical and cautious about the death penalty. And this is the system that they developed as a result of that disposition. Okay.
Dorothy has her hand up.
Okay, Adam's gonna go and then we'll go to Dorothy.
What's not here is the standard of proof, whether.
We're gonna get that. This is only paragraph 1, or Mishnah 1. Okay, Dorothy, go ahead.
So maybe I'm missing something here. I thought that we had learned now that, first of all, this is very thoughtful and very compassionate, much more so than one would have, without reading it, one would have imagined. It's very thoughtful and very compassionate. It's something to be proud of. But I'm wondering how this sits with, how this relates to Maimonides' statements of not one word, in the Torah. Everything is given from God. Not one word can be changed. And there are, as you mentioned, so many times that death is ordered, a death by stoning, or things of that sort. So how do you write this? How do you balance
that? Interpretation. I mean, this is the enterprise of interpretation. The sages in writing the Mishnah would fully agree that not one word of the Torah could be changed because it's all from God. They would say that this is fully consistent with that. Remember, the sages say in Pirkei Avot that God gave the Torah to Moses at Sinai. Moses passed it on through the generations. That the written Torah and the oral Torah were all given to Moses at Mount Sinai. And that what we're reading here reflects what God said. So think of written Torah and oral Torah. That someone gave I think it's Samson Raphael Hirsch gave a helpful analogy about it. If you take a course in college, you get a syllabus, for the course. but if you get the syllabus and you don't attend any of the classes, then you won't understand the syllabus. Right? Because what do you get by attending the class? You get the lectures, the notes and whatever that the professor gives. So Hirsch, Samson Raphael Hirsch, rabbi, says that the oral Torah is like the lectures, you know, from God to Moses, and the written Torah is like the syllabus. So you have to have both of them in order to have the full picture. And this is what the Mishnah is the oral Torah. These are the notes, the lecture notes that were passed down from one class to the next, one class to the next. This is how we understand the syllabus, the curriculum. Arlene.
Yeah, I mean, the contradiction sort of between this and in the Torah, kill, 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 that this perhaps is based on the morality that's embedded in the Torah about how you treat, how you behave in the world. And I always think about if you have a bad child and he does such and such and such and such, you have to kill him. But then they go, yeah, but if he does this, but if he does that, but if he does this, you know, like, it turns out that there's never a situation where you would have to kill him.
That's the case of the stubborn and rebellious son.
Yes.
Yes.
But again, but that thinking of that, there seems to be a discrepancy here.
Yeah.
Could be that sort of thinking of, okay, it says that, but really underneath with the morality that God's given us about how we're to behave in the world, like, well, then maybe not here and maybe not there.
Right.
And we have to sit over a night and we have to think about it a little bit more. You can't just decide and
Correct.
snap your
Yeah.
fingers.
So a couple of years ago, we had Christine Hayes as a scholar in residence here, and she talked about just that. You know, the rabbinic morality that they bring to the enterprise of interpretation. And, you know, she suggests that that there's a morality that, I don't know, do they learn it from the Torah, or they just kind of feel it or know it? What is the source of morality is a big philosophical question. But Dr. Hayes said that, yes, the sages bring their sense of morality to interpreting the text. So yes, the Torah does say if you have a stubborn and rebellious son who doesn't listen to his parents, stone him to death. And the sages say, like, yeah, but that doesn't really seem right. And so they interpret it, they interpret that law of the Torah into non-existence, basically. It's still there in theory, but it's non-operative. And the sages would say, and do say, that this is exactly the meaning of the Torah. That's what the Torah means. That it's only there as a theoretical law, not to be put into practice. But that's the product of their interpretive imagination, driven by what various factors. Okay, but so I want to keep going, because now we're going to look at the bottom of the page here. It says Maimonides. So this is, he's going to explain Mishnah 1 for us. And the way this is done is where the words that are in bold in Maimonides' commentary are the words from the Mishnah itself. And that's, just read those as like, it's a quotation of the Mishnah. That's why it's in bold. So he says, the statement, both monetary cases and capital cases require inquiry and investigation, is of biblical origin. And there's a footnote there, number 11, to tell us, it's based on Leviticus 24:22. That's what the footnote had told us before. Which is, you shall have one manner of law. However, in order not to lock the door against borrowers, the rabbis exempted monetary cases from lengthy examination and investigation. Interrogation of witnesses in monetary cases is not required at all unless there is reason to suspect dishonesty in that suit. This is what the Talmud means when it says a suit suspected of being dishonest. All right, so what does this mean? What is he telling us? Andy?
There are no contracts and stuff. It's, I borrowed from you, and you say, no, you didn't. You get the two people there, when asking questions, prove it, and you're done in a short amount of time. Don't waste a lot of time on things where there shouldn't be too much evidence.
Okay, yeah. What does he mean with in order, what do you think he means in order not to lock the door against borrowers? So there's a lower standard of evidence for monetary disputes than there is for capital disputes. And the reason for that, he says, is so as not to lock the door against borrowers. So what does that mean?
It's hard to word against word.
Marcy has her hand up.
Okay, Lorraine and Marcy.
So if I were to lend somebody money, knowing that they weren't gonna pay me back, I'd have to spend hours away from work, then I wouldn't wanna lend them money.
Okay, yeah.
It's a disincentive for me.
Very practical, right? Marcy, go ahead.
No, that was it. The rabbis knew that lending money and borrowing money were necessary for the economy to survive, and so they did not want to overly burden people in a case of a disagreement where it wasn't a capital case. It was simply a monetary case.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we could think the Mishnah says there are that both kinds of cases, monetary and capital, require inquiry and investigation. And then it goes on to list like different standards for the two types of cases. But you could think, so the standard for capital cases is very high, but then the question arises, well, why isn't the standard for monetary cases just as high? Like, why not just go with the highest common denominator? What's wrong with subjecting monetary cases to the same extra stringent standards that you subject capital cases to? Because the rabbis could have done that. And Rambam's explanation is that the reason they don't do that is practicality. Because if they did that, commercial endeavors would be too onerous. Because like Lori said, if you get into a legal dispute, it'll cost you so much time and money that people would just, you know what, I'm not gonna get into the business of lending. And then the economy would suffer. That's the reason for a lower standard for monetary cases. The reason for a higher standard than for capital cases is it's more serious and they're cautious about the death penalty. But the reason for a lower standard for monetary cases is practical. Okay. All right. Now, what else do you notice here? Phil? Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
I wouldn't characterize it as a lower standard because that kind of is pejorative. I would say a different standard.
Well, it is, but it's a lesser. It's a lesser investigation and interrogation is required in monetary cases than it is for capital cases. So you can say capital cases have a higher standard than monetary, but it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But I think the question he's trying to explain here is why aren't the monetary cases at the same high, super high standard? And this is the reason. Now, what do you notice about the writing here? And is there anything about it that you find surprising or perplexing? What do you notice about it? Ed?
Well, the style
the sentence, in order not to lock the door against the borrowers, is that the interpreter's English?
No, that's that's a translation of
Yeah, that's right, that's
Yeah.
the translator's translation, or is that really it? Because
I think
translating,
so.
don't translate word for word, they translate.
Well, I think I'm imagining, I don't have the Hebrew in front of me, but I'm imagining that it's a faithful translation.
To me, that's an odd way of phrasing.
Yeah, that could be an idiom of his time or whatnot. But yeah. Okay, what else you notice? Yeah, Irv.
Marcy has her hand up and we have 2 questions in the chat.
Okay, we're gonna let Irv go and then we'll go.
I'm wondering how much impact, Tversky had on this document. He being not only a rabbinical scholar, but also a legal scholar.
Oh, Tversky did not translate this.
No, I understand it, but could he have commented on the text? If he wrote the foreword, could he have reviewed it?
Oh, maybe, I don't know. Fred Rosner did the translation. Marcy, go ahead.
You had asked what did we notice about his language? And yesterday I compared these sections to Sanhedrin in the Talmud, and the clarity, the simplicity, the brief sentences, the explanations are really striking. How clear it is. It made sense it would make sense to anyone, and you don't need special knowledge to understand it.
Right. Yeah, it's good to see this. I mean, Marcy's got some familiarity with Talmudic language because of doing the Daf Yomi, and you know that the Talmudic language is very technical and elliptical and, opaque. Maimonides writes in a very clear and straightforward way in his legal material, which again is really different from the philosophical stuff that's like, but he does this purposely so that the tradition of rabbinic legal interpretation can be accessible to anybody. Another thing about this, and this is just only the first paragraph of it, and we'll see how it plays out in the rest of the chapter, and I don't know about the Mishnah commentary, it's in entirety. But notice here how Rambam does not cite any sources. Okay, which again is a very different style than the Talmud, and then pretty much all rabbinic legal writing up to his time. Which will say, Rabbi Akiva says this, but Rava disagrees and says this, and so forth, and give biblical proof texts and cite the source of where he got this idea. Rambam does very little of that. And he does very little of it for the sake of clarity. Because it gets confusing. That's what the Talmud is like all this, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said this, but then here's this other guy came in and said this, and here's creates a difficulty, and they resolved it this way, and and it's mind-blowing and it's hard to follow. He just gets rid of all of that. He dispenses with all of it. Arlene.
Yeah, are the footnotes that are cited here the author of the
Yes, the
book?
translator.
The translators?
Yeah,
But
Maimonides didn't give
did not give those. Okay,
No,
thank you.
he did not. Okay, I'm looking at the questions from Ivan. Is this also a way of leveling the playing field for borrowers versus lenders? Oh, good question.
Just thinking, even in current times, how difficult it is to win a lawsuit or bring a suit. And maybe it's easier for the poor man to, get justice if it's just, a simple case as opposed to having 23 people weigh in on.
Yeah, good, okay. And then Ellen asks, are capital cases less common? I would imagine so. Capital cases are less common than monetary disputes.
I was asking, excuse me, I was asking just for the sake of expediency, as several people have mentioned, it's practical, but also monetary has to be the universal method of economics within any of the communities. And capital, I would think, has to be rare if it's a murder or something close to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is much more rarer. Okay, so let's turn, he continues. The difference between inquiry and investigation, which all cases require, and interrogation, which has to do with witnesses, is as follows. Inquiry and investigation refer to the questions which will elucidate the heart of the matter. For example, we ask the witness, how much money did he lend? And when did he lend him? And how did he lend him? And in which place did he lend him? That is to say, in which town. Interrogation refers to the questions which do not directly pertain to the case. For example, we ask the witness, what type of garment was the lender or borrower wearing when the latter received the money? Or was one of them sitting or standing? Or was the money given in a silk bag or in a woolen bag? And similar questions, which are inquiries that do not have direct bearing on the judgment of the case. He's giving this because the Mishnah says you have to do inquiry, investigation, and interrogation. And so why does it use all of those terms? And so he's just, it's just a distillation, I think, of the, discussions about why. Okay, now he continues, by a majority of at least two for conviction. Remember, the Mishnah said, in a capital case, in order to attain conviction, there has to be a majority of at least two. How many are on the court in a capital case? 23, right? Remember, how many are on a court in a monetary case? 3. And how many in a capital case? 23. So he says that in order to attain conviction in a capital case, there has to be a majority of at least 2. You can't convict just by 1. So it's like playing ping pong, where you can't win by just 1 point. You have to, win by 2. Okay. So by a majority of at least 2 for conviction is exemplified by a case in which 11 judges vote for acquittal and 13 judges vote for conviction. Thus, the number for conviction exceeds that for acquittal by 2, and therefore the accused can be executed. One might ask, how is this possible? The court is composed of only 23 judges, as stated earlier, and it is therefore impossible that the number of judges voting for conviction exceed the number for acquittal by a majority of 2, unless the court is composed of 24. The answer there to that would be the narrowest possible margin, because you could have 23 and the vote be 20-3. That's fine, but what he's exploring, what would be the narrowest possible margin of 2, which the Mishnah specifies there has to be at least 2. So how could you have a majority of 2?
You can't.
Well, you can't, except if, he says, that's, what are you talking about, 13 to 11, that's 24. There's only 23 on the court. The answer there too is that 11 judges voted for acquittal, and 11 voted for conviction, and 1 remained undecided. This would be what is the Mishnah talking about when it says there has to be at least 2? It's contemplating a situation where there could be a majority of 2. Well, how could
13 and 10.
What's that?
13 and 10 would be.
But that would be 3.
Right, but it would be at least 10.
At least, no, but then why didn't the Mishnah say 3? Okay, so the explanation of the Mishnah, we're working with rabbinic text here, which assumes in every generation as you go down, through time, later generations of rabbis operate on the premise that the earlier texts, whatever the earlier texts say, they had a reason for saying it that way. Right? So with 23, you could have 13 to 10, but that's a majority of 3. So why didn't the Mishnah say it has to be at least a majority of 3? It said there has to be at least a majority of 2. Therefore, it was clearly contemplating a situation where there would be a majority of 2. Well, then he's got to figure that out and explain how that works. It works when, here's the situation. You have 11 to 11 with 1 abstaining. Okay, then, so 11 to 11 vote with 1 abstaining. In such a case, 2 more judges are added, as previously stated. So he told us earlier, I guess in an earlier chapter, something about this. Thus, only 24 render a decision. And this is the case that we mentioned in which the votes for conviction exceed those for acquittal by a majority of 2. 1 abstains, but you add 2, and then they vote to convict.
Yeah,
This-
but how do you know those extra 2 are gonna vote to convict?
No, you don't. I think he's saying you have to keep adding until you get at least a majority of 2.
One way or the other. So that's anti-defendant.
No, not necessarily.
I think it's anti-defendant because otherwise you would have to, but it could, and I'm just, my gut's telling me.
Or maybe you have a majority of 1, in which case he's not convicted. But see, in this situation that he's telling us, you have a tie. Because 1 is abstaining. If the 1 judge did, yes, that's gotta be the answer, because if the 1 judge didn't abstain, the vote would be 12 to 11, and he would be acquitted. The only reason you add is because there's a tie.
Okay.
And then so you add 2, now if they split, I suppose you would have to add again, but if they get to a differential of only 1, it's acquittal.
So it's like a hung jury and.
Yeah. Yeah, but apparently you can't acquit on a tie. Okay, David.
You see, this is the first time that it actually is wrong, in my opinion. I'll tell you what. If you have 11 for acquittal and 12 for conviction, you
Yeah.
can't convict.
Right.
So then you would presumably only add 1 person. You know what I mean? You would, well, no, you've got 11 for acquittal, 12 for conviction. You can't convict and you can't convict, but you can't acquit because they don't have a majority. So presumably they would have to add 1 person. Now.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So if you've got.
Why doesn't it just add 1?
Yeah, because if you've got 11 versus 11, and you add 1 person, and then 1 person says, let him go free, the person goes free.
Yeah.
Which gives you a better odds of going free than if you add 3 people, because if it goes 1 and 1, you step forward again. So therefore,
Yeah.
this is actually against.
Okay, I don't know, he must have said this, or the Mishnah must have said this in an earlier chapter about adding 2. That's a good question. Why don't they just add 1? Don't know.
Because if it's 1, the guy could be acquitted.
You could, yeah.
There's a 50, you know.
Only 21, but votes exceed his regal majority. This approach is supported by the scriptural passage, thou shalt not follow a majority for evil, which means that if a majority of judges vote for evil, that is conviction. Do not listen to them unless there is a clear-cut majority. That is to say, a majority of 2 or more for conviction. Oh, I know why you can't add just 1. Because then it would make the court consisting of an even number of judges.
So then what happens if you have 11 versus 12? Well, we're going to go.
I don't know, but I do know that it's that all of the rabbinic courts have an odd number of judges. You can't have an even number because it could end up in a tie. I guess it's a tie because the 1 guy's abstaining, but it could always change.
Well, maybe when he says clear-cut majority, it doesn't feel like 1 is a clear-cut.
Well, 1 is not enough.
Right,
Remember,
so that's why
if there's a majority of 1,
But
it's an acquittal, but you can't have a court that has an even number of judges. I don't know. In any case, notice he says that the basis for this is do not follow a majority to do evil, and it's characterizing conviction of capital offense as an evil. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not something that you do, but it seems to be that, it's the characterization of the death penalty as perhaps a necessary evil. But it's an evil, it's a bad thing. Okay, he goes on. Therefore, trials are not held on the eve of a Sabbath, because the verdict would be rendered on the Sabbath, and it is impossible to execute someone on the Sabbath, as it is written, you shall kindle no fire throughout your habitation upon the Sabbath day. This scriptural phrase teaches us that even in the habitations of the Beit Din, one may not burn one who is liable to be burned. The same applies to other punishments, which may not be meted out on the Sabbath. If you look at the footnotes in the back, let's see, for this, 26. Okay, footnote 26 tells us execution must be carried out on the same day as the pronouncement of the verdict. The source for the statement,
No appeals.
you shall kindle no fire. Yeah, I don't know why that is.
They didn't burn them to death. They
Yeah.
stoned them.
There's burning is one of the rabbinic punishments.
So they don't have to burn them on the Sabbath.
No, but it says this applies to all other kinds of punishments as well. Okay. So, anyway, what do you make of the prohibition that he's dealing with here about, you can't hold these, capital trials on the eve of the Sabbath? Because the verdict would be rendered on the Sabbath. Why would it be rendered on the Sabbath?
You have to wait overnight.
You have to wait overnight. Why do you have to wait overnight? So you contemplate, sleep on it or what? Okay, the Mishnah told us that a capital verdict, guilty, cannot be rendered on the same day of the trial. Whereas in monetary cases, it can. Okay, but it can't happen on the Sabbath because there's a halacha somewhere else. The execution has to be carried out on the same day of the verdict, and you couldn't do it on the Sabbath. Okay, let's turn to the next page, Mishnah number 2. All right, in monetary cases, and in the cases of cleanness and uncleanness, we begin with the opinion of the most eminent of the judges. But in capital cases, we begin with the opinion of those seated on the side. All are eligible to judge monetary cases, but not all are eligible to judge capital cases. Only priests, Levites, and Israelites who may give their daughters in marriage to priests. Well, so what do you think is the thrust of this Mishnah? Well, there is caste, yeah. Priests, Levites, and Israelites. But what is the purpose of that? Why are there limitations on who is eligible to judge capital cases? Michael?
People who are more knowledgeable in the law and the meaning of the law,
Yeah.
before it's a punishment. Does capital case mean any criminal case or?
No, a case where the penalty is the death penalty.
Well, so you really need people who know what they're doing.
Yeah, right.
Which is
So the
why-
implicit assumption is that people of the higher social status, have better judgment,
Right.
better knowledge. Okay. And what about the first clause in the Mishnah? We begin with in monetary cases, we begin with the opinion of the most eminent, but in capital cases, we begin with the opinion of those seated on the side. What do you think that's about? Ed?
Well, they're saying that the most eminent will influence those who are more junior or
Yeah.
less regarded.
Right.
And this way you'll have more objective opinions.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, David?
Also, again, would change your mind. And so a person who is very knowledgeable is much more likely to change your mind to go with them.
Well, you can, a judge can change their mind, but only in one direction.
Right, in a capital case, it can only be towards getting the person off.
Exactly.
So, you can't be persuaded by a very erudite, well-experienced judge who believes the person should be convicted to change your opinions.
Right. Only if you, well, in the one direction.
Only if you're going.
So if a more junior judge were to argue for conviction first,
Yes, they could change it.
they could change it. But if a more junior judge were to argue for acquittal first, they could not. Yes, but I think the major issue here is the influence. So let's see what Maimonides says. In capital cases, we do not hear the opinion of the most eminent judge until all other judges have been heard, because if the most eminent judge were to speak first, the others would not be able to contradict him. As it is written, thou shalt not answer in a case, I'll read, but it is written, I'll rob. That's a little biblical interpretation. The way the verse is written, you shall not contradict your rabbi. Did you know that one? The interpretation is that one should not contradict the opinion of the wisest judge. Therefore, one hears his opinion last. The rabbi's statement, all are eligible to judge, includes a proselyte, that's a convert, if his mother was of Israelite origin. Similarly, a bastard, that's not like a jerk or someone who's born out of wedlock. That's the Hebrew word there is mamzer, which is a particular halakhic status. A mamzer is someone who is born of an illicit sexual union. So incest or adultery or other prohibited relationships. So a mamzer is eligible to judge monetary cases, but not capital cases. Any thoughts on this? Michael?
Well, sort of prejudice indicates some prejudice against people born out of wedlock, so to speak.
Yes.
That they're inferior people and will have an inferior verdict either way.
Yes, correct. Yeah, there is an elitism within the rabbinic system that favors knowledge, first and foremost, but the access to the knowledge is a matter of, class. And there is a caste system rooted in the Torah. Kohanim, priests, are the highest, Levites are the middle, and Israelites are the lowest. Okay, let's look at Mishnah 3. The Sanhedrin, that's the court, was arranged like half of a round threshing floor so that they might see one another. Okay, stop there. Why is the Mishnah telling us this? And why is the court set up this way, do you think? Sandy?
To encourage communication.
To encourage communication. Yeah. If you're engaging with people, you can see them. That's a different kind of experience than speaking out into, against people that you can't see. Now, we see this in American courts too, like the Supreme Court, courts with multiple judges on it, the bench is like curved like that to facilitate engagement. And two scribes of the judges stood before them, one to the right and one to the left. And they wrote down the arguments of those that favored acquittal and the arguments of those that favored conviction. Rabbi Yehuda said there were three scribes. One wrote down the arguments of those who favored acquittal, and one wrote down the arguments of those who favored conviction. And the third wrote down the arguments of both those who favored acquittal and those who favored conviction. Okay, so they have a great sensitivity to making sure that they get the transcripts right? That there's accountability in the courtroom. For this, Maimonides tells us round means circular. Thank you, that's very helpful. But clearly he's explaining an ambiguous Hebrew word. The reason for the statement of Rabbi Yehuda is so that there should be two to acquit and two witnesses for those who convict. The final ruling is in accordance with the opinion of the sages. So instead of 3 transcribers, there is only 2. Now what he's doing again is he's distilling the rabbinic discussions. So he's not making his own rulings here. He's just he's distilling the tradition. When we get into Mishnah Torah, it's maybe a little bit different. He does make his own rulings, but here this is a distillation.
Is there any ability to appeal a decision?
That's a good question. There doesn't seem to be an appeals process in here.
You don't have enough time.
Yeah, if you're convicted of execution,
That's it.
later that day, you're done. But I don't know that they had a system of junior courts and whatnot. I'm not sure. David.
I'm concerned about the fact that Maimonides is translating scribe, who would seem to be just writing down verbatim the arguments of the judges, who seem to be acting as prosecutors and defense attorneys and judge, all in one. And Maimonides uses the term witness, which is
I think it's
entirely different.
It is different. I think that here it means like a textual witness to what was said. That's how because you're right. It's not talking about witness. They're talking about the transcript.
Okay.
Okay, Mishnah 4. And 3 rows of disciples of the sages sat before them, and each knew his own place. If it was necessary to ordain another judge, he was appointed from the first row, and one from the second row moved up to the first, and one from the third row moved up to the second row. And they chose yet another from the congregation and seated him in the third row. But he did not sit in the place vacated by the first in the row, but sat in the place that was proper for him. So this is a bit of a digression because it's talking about the system of judicial succession, not about capital cases specifically, but the system of judicial succession. And what do we learn from this about that system?
The caste system that we're talking
I don't think this is a caste system. Ed?
This is where you get your additional judges if you need them.
Yeah, but what does it tell us though about the nature of the system, the philosophy of the system?
That the case must go on, there's no mistrial.
Okay, yeah, I don't think that this is talking about during a case. I think this is just generally speaking, the way that the court system worked. But yes, Jared.
There's a seniority system so that there is an order that one can expect.
Yeah, it's a seniority system and you move through the ranks. The way that somebody gets onto the bench. So you have to imagine a setting here where there's a bench, of judges, and then there's students or disciples or people who have not attained the level of judge, who are part of the rabbinic establishment, who sit there and they're in line, and there is no skipping the line. You see what's being described here? Somebody attains the bench only because they've moved through the chain in order of seniority. There's no plucking somebody from the back and putting them on the bench. Okay, Bob, did you have a comment?
I think that in a way it's a little like law school. If you're right on the top, after some period of time, you make it to the front row.
Yeah.
I guess along the lines of gaining wisdom.
Gaining wisdom, yes. And it's seniority based on knowledge, not based on tenure. Seniority based on knowledge. Knowledge is the commodity in the rabbinic system. And you move through the line based on how much you know. But there's no skipping. David,
I think that this is based on tenure, not on knowledge.
you think so?
Yeah, because it's the amount of time, when the next one moved, this is the way, we take the one from the bottom, and then this is the order in which you go, so. You know, you're gonna be up number 24 if you're at the back of the line. I mean, it seems to be a very set way, they're not choosing.
Yeah. Good point, and maybe it is tenure.
That's not what Maimonides says though.
Let's see what he says. I don't remember what he said. Okay. We have already explained in the first chapter of this tractate that every court of 23 judges has seated before it 3 rows of scholars, and in each row there were also 23 arranged in order, 1, 2, 3, etc., until the end, according to the greatness of their wisdom. Yeah, that's what he tells us. So he answers the question. It's according to your knowledge. Okay, Mishnah 5. How were the witnesses instilled with awe in capital cases? They were brought in and admonished as follows. Perhaps what you state is based on conjecture or on hearsay from the mouth of another witness, or even from the mouth of a trustworthy person, or perhaps you are not aware that we will ultimately scrutinize what you say by inquiry and investigation. Know that capital cases are not like monetary cases. In monetary cases, a person can pay money and thereby gains atonement, but in capital cases, he is responsible for the blood of him that was wrongly condemned and executed, and his descendants until the end of time. For thus we find, oh, well, then he's gonna give a story here. But just pause there. What is the Mishnah telling us? Phil?
It's hard to convict in capital cases. You better know what you're talking about, if you're gonna testify.
Yeah, you better know. And what's the, so you better be sure, and there is a stick here to ensure that. What's the stick?
Perjury.
Well, it's more than
The end
perjury.
of time.
You're responsible for the descendants of the convicted person.
Yes,
Forever.
forever. So if on your testimony, somebody is convicted wrongly and executed, then you bear guilt, not only for having helped to convict that person that wrongly, but for all of the people that would have come from that person. Okay, so their children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, all the way to the end of time that will not be born because this person was put to death. That's a heavy load, right, to carry on your conscience. And they're telling witnesses, when you come in, just know that if somebody's convicted wrongly because of you, you're gonna carry, you're responsible for this to the end of time, all of that.
Have you violated the commandment, shall not kill? If you're.
No, it doesn't say that you're guilty of murder, although let's look at the story here. So the Mishnah goes on to say, for thus we find in the case of Cain, who killed his brother, for it is written, the bloods of thy brother cry unto me. As for Genesis, it is not written the blood of thy brother, but the bloods of thy brother, his blood and the blood of his potential descendants. Another interpretation of the bloods of thy brother is that his blood was splattered over trees and stones. For this reason, man was created alone. The first man, Adam, was created alone, to teach thee that whosoever destroys a single soul is imputed with guilt by Scripture as if he had destroyed a whole world. So this comes pretty close to kind of saying that you're a murderer. If you cause the death of one person, it's as though you have just destroyed the entire world. You've probably heard this teaching before. Yes. One who destroys a single soul is though they have destroyed a whole world. Whoever preserves a single soul is credited by Scripture as if he saved the whole world. In addition, man was created alone for the sake of peace among mankind, so that a man should not say to his fellow, my father was greater than thy father. Because if we all have one common ancestor, so in theory, even though we're talking about a caste system earlier on, theory, we're all related. Okay, so what God created one person instead of multiple people at the same time, so that everybody traces back to a common ancestor. This is all teaching about the kind of the value, the sanctity of life, the value of life. And so that the heretic should not say there are many ruling powers in heaven, meaning if 5 men had been created at the beginning all at once, you might say, well, there's 5 gods that each created a man. But there's only one, testifying to the oneness of God, and to proclaim the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be he, because man stamps many coins with one seal, and they all resemble another. But the King of Kings, Holy One, blessed be he, stamped every man with the seal of the first man, and yet not one of them resembles his fellow. Every human being is unique. Therefore, every single person is obligated to say, the world was created for my sake. And if perchance you would say, why should we suffer all this anxiety? Know that it is all already written, and he being a witness, whether he had seen or known, if he did not utter it, then he shall bear his iniquity. And if perchance you would say, why should we be guilty of this man's blood? Know that it is already written, when the wicked perish, there is joy. All right. So Maimonides says, just to finish this up, Maimonides says, conjecture refers to opinions which seem logical to the mind, or proofs deduced by analogy. With the warning to the witnesses, don't testify based on conjecture. And Rambam is telling us, it's not just wild speculation. He's saying that means opinions which seem logical to you, or something that you might deduce through logical processes. Even that is not sufficient enough to testify against somebody for a capital crime. Even that, you can't deduce or infer, as reasonable as it might seem. The seal of the first man, that's what the Mishnah said, God stamps everybody with the seal of the first man, refers to the form of every person of mankind, whereby a human being can be recognized as such, and which is common to all human beings. Every human being has essentially the same kind of form, head, arms, legs, etc. Although all human beings have that form, each person is different in many ways, as all can see. Heretics are those who are outside the religious beliefs of all people. Now that statement, all people, the footnote notes that that's kind of weird. What does that mean to say outside the beliefs of all people? It probably meant Jewish people. We have previously explained that this name, heretic, is only applicable to Sadducees and Boethusians. Okay, so I guess, what I want you to take away is some insights from the Mishnah about the nature of, rabbinic attitudes toward capital punishment. But with respect to Maimonides, to see what he does here. And his writing is quite sparse in this chapter. And it makes for not a ton to read, but it makes for, hey, that's really good. He's giving us the bottom line of what we need to know in order to understand this chapter of Mishnah. And he wrote this commentary on the entire Mishnah to make the Mishnah accessible in that way. His next work that we're going to look at is Mishnah Torah, which is a different kind of work. It's a code of law of his own creation. And you'll see that it's a different kind of work. But this is Maimonides' coming out book, his first publication. All right, any final questions or comments? Phil?
Just that, this is very similar to what that we practice today.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of similarity between the Mishnah's discussion of capital punishment and court systems and how we work. And surely we're, that Western society is and in the world are heirs to this tradition, so. Influence makes sense. Okay, so next time, we're going to begin Unit 3, Mishnah Torah. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.